Arizona's family.
All right, once we got one ownership scandal settled here in the Valley of the Sun, we look at our phones today around lunch, and another one appears to have popped up. The Arizona Cardinals with some explosive allegations from a former executive. Let's get right into it. And let's hop on over to PHNX, check in with our guys, Johnny Venerable and Bo Brack. I'm sure you've been discussing this all day, fellas, and kind of what were your initial thoughts when you got the news?
I think shock, but at the same time saddened for the people of the organization, saddened for the Valley that once again got to go through something like this. And while the details, Bo, are still kind of out there, we don't have all the information. I think it just shows you that, this franchise needs to do better. The NFL report card from the NFLPA came out and blasted the franchise of their treatment of players. And now you're talking about internal employees as well, talking about potentially making, pregnant women cry, discriminatory comments. Again, this is all hearsay from Terry McDonough, but at the same time, this is not why you want to be in the news.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Serious allegations, Mark, around this organization, and they can't stay out of the news for horrible reasons once again. And you hope that, there's not much truth to these allegations from a former Cardinals employee that alleges, as Johnny pointed out, misconduct and also cheating on top of that. We'll see what the NFL thinks of that and if they're going to follow through with an investigation.
Yeah, I did think it was odd back in 2018, 2019 when I started seeing Terry McDonough in the press box, and of course he hasn't been around for a couple years, and he was kind of a guy that they had around Keim. He was his right-hand man for so many years. So for it to come to this, and for the Cardinals to go with an outside public relations agency and put out such a detailed and long response, what do you think that says about their reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean, they're taking it very seriously, and it's already ugly. I mean, you've got two shots from both sides. One, McDonough, his representation, and then, of course, the Arizona Cardinals using the PR agency for themselves and making light of who McDonough is and why he might have some sort of motive to come at the organization. So it's just going to be a bunch of mudslinging, and regardless of, you have to try to figure out what's true and what's not, and then we're in the fact building part of this process. But I don't think any parties in this thing are going to come out looking clean.
No, and I don't think there's any winning for Michael Bidwill here. I mean, there's fan outcry, Mark, that sell the team. This is Sarver 2.0. I don't think we're even close to that point yet. You have to have real tangible proof of anything, which takes time. It takes resources and money. And frankly, I don't know if this is going to be enough for Roger Goodell to really jump in. We don't know. We're still in the early stages of this. So this is an embarrassment, but this team is in the news for something like this seemingly every month. They're embarrassed. They're finding new ways to embarrass their fan base. So it's just kind of another notch on the belt, which is unfortunate because when there are people involved that are being hurt, that are being harassed and discriminated against, that's something that I would assume the NFL would take seriously. We're going to find out, though.
Yeah, and a couple of them have reached out here and did not want to go on camera, but did kind of corroborate some of the things that were said, and definitely feel like this whole report is their voice being heard, which I thought was interesting that people had actually reached out, but again did not want to do an interview. But as far as just the smoking gun that we do have, the phone that Terry McDonough says that he has that has evidence on it. Is this a Deflategate situation with specifically that, in your opinion? Well, I mean, the Cardinals lose draft picks? What do you think becomes of the phone here, the burner phone?
It's interesting. I was actually looking back and I found a tweet from some reporter named Mark McClune back in 2018, a video of Bidwill talking about, the process and what was going to happen to Steve Keim following the extreme DUI that he had in July. And he levied that suspension. So I don't know if that plays a role. It wasn't the league that levied the suspension to Steve Keim at the time where he missed 5 weeks. It was the $500 or $200,000 fine as well. Is that going to play a role in the NFL saying, well, if you're the one that's going to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner here, we don't really have anything to, punish you for. If you wanted to use burner phones in your own punishment, what are we going to do about that? So that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow along with. Does the NFL view this as something that they need to get involved with? Hopefully there's an investigation just over organizationally. But as far as the cheating that's been alleged here with the burner phones, it's, it seems like something out of Mission Impossible, but it also is something, is the league going to really take it seriously?
Yeah, and I also don't think, even if they were to levy punishments, I mean, the NFL draft for this year, we've got a lot of fans asking what could happen with the picks this year. And while that's probably the least important factor when there are human beings involved, I would say that, that we're a long way from this being concluded and just kind of going quietly away. I would think more appropriately 2024, 2025 draft picks, should they get levied down on Bidwill and company.
Do you think Michael Bidwill needs to get in front of a camera and look the Valley in the eye here? When could that happen?
We talked about that today, and it's like, well, he had an opportunity at the Combine during Super Bowl week. The NFLPA grades came out, and he didn't. And he opted for his new GM and his new head coach to speak on that. And I actually liked that at the time, because it's like, I want to see less of Michael Bidwill, because I want these new folks, these new football people, to run the show. But he's also the team president. And I think now it's like, well, this is more than just football, right? This is more than team facilities and paying for meals and that kind of thing. We've heard from pretty reliable people. They are listening. Bidwill and company are listening to Austin Ford and Gannon's recommendations and running with them, which is great. But now you have, harassment claims. I do think he needs to get in front of a camera. I don't think he will, but I think, he's not only the owner, but he's the team president. I mean, at what point do you talk about maybe bringing in an external candidate for that role? Maybe at least in the short term, while Michael Bidwill attempts to handle all this.
Yeah, it's something that seriously needs to be looked at. I mean, there's a team presidents across the league, and the Cardinals are one of the lone franchises that don't. That actually is your owner, Michael Bidwill. Maybe as far as the day-to-day operations, it's something that this is something where he steps back and says, yeah, I'm going to have to relinquish these because it just hasn't worked under my watch.
Yeah, and that's all things that I think will be looked at here, and you wonder how the NFL responds here. It looks like we have about 3 weeks, but it's a long off season here. And just final question before you guys hop on your own show here. Level of I would say level of optimism, level of pessimism. I mean, what's the bummer level here? Just looking at the Cardinals and the state of the Cardinals right now, and what next year is going to look like.
It's hard to be a team that's projected to win the least amount of games in the NFC, and then a team that right now doesn't have their franchise quarterback, presumably through half the year, if not longer. And then the NFLPA grades come out, and you're near the bottom. You're with the Commanders, right? 31st, 32nd. And now this comes out about your owner. I mean, every day we feel like, well, they haven't reached rock bottom yet. And then more information comes out, and they're in the news for all the wrong reasons. They're in the news for non-football. Mm-hmm. And it's, I would say the fan base is at an all-time breaking point. They haven't abandoned ship yet, but it's at a point where your loyalty is being tested, Bo.
Yeah, it is. And, people went through rooting for this team, trying to root for this team under Bidwill's father, Bill Bidwill, who's a polarizing owner in his own right. And you thought Michael was going to give you a better brand of football or something that you could root for. And you saw from a football operation standpoint, from a wins and losses standpoint, it hasn't been on par. And now you're seeing it goes beyond that. And as an Arizona sports fan, everybody deserves better. The sports fans deserve better. And the people that work for that organization, if any of these allegations, if a shred of it is true, deserve better.
Well, we're glad we have the two of you here to guide us through the whole thing. So where can we find your stuff tonight and the rest of this week?
Yeah, PHNX Cardinals live every day, 4 p.m. on YouTube. Follow us, Bo Brack, Johnny Venerable, PHNX_Cardinals on Twitter, PHNX Sports on YouTube, Mark.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.